Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. Do you like or use plastic drinking straws, plastic forks and knives, plastic cups? Well, you may want to hold on to the stash you have because on December 20th, 2022, Canada will be banning the manufacturing and importation of single-use plastic. And next year, 2023, there will be an end to all sales of single-use plastic products. And by 2025, export of single-use plastic products will be prohibited. This puts the federal government very close to achieving zero plastics waste by 2023, or 2030 rather. So how does this impact you, the consumer? Well, Canadians enjoy their plastics. According to some sources, Canadian plastic use was about 2 million tons a year in the 1950s and has now jumped to almost 400 million tons annually. And is this surprising? There seems to be more and more uses for plastics. Just take a look at all the PPE and masks being used during COVID, and it seems there's a use for plastic everywhere. We know this ban will have an impact on our daily lives, but what about the lives on those who, for example, rely on single-use plastics to live? There are concerns for those living with disabilities, for example, for whom using a flexible straw might make drinking a beverage an achievable task. And what about those in the food and services sector? Will the same level of hygiene of wrapped plastic utensils still exist? What will the plastics ban do to impact Canadian manufacturers? And perhaps most importantly, will banning single-use plastics actually eliminate ocean pollution? Well, joining me now to share his perspective is Peter Shawn Taylor, Senior Features Editor of the C2C Journal and author of the piece, The Plastics Ban, or How the Trudeau Government Plans to Create More Garbage, Raise Inflation, Boost Greenhouse Gases Emissions, Send Jobs Overseas, and Make Everything Else Worse. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today. I had to read the title of your article because it was so...
It's a long one.
It was a long one, and it was, I don't know, a little ridiculous, but perhaps right. Okay, so tell me, what compelled you to write this story?
Well, I think probably like almost every Canadian, every time I go to the grocery store and I get a plastic bag to bring my food home, I think, well, is this going to be the last time I have a convenient, cheap way to do it without having to remember to bring those fabric bags or having to struggle with paper bags every time you get a takeout meal and use a plastic fork and a plastic straw to drink your margarita with. I think the plastics ban, there's these 6 single-use items that the Trudeau government is planning to ban. Straws, plastic bags that you bring home, retail checkout bags they're called, stir sticks, 6-pack holders, there's a bunch of things. It was kind of treated as this is a good thing. Don't worry about it. Your life isn't going to be impacted. We're just going to make the environment cleaner by doing this. But I think there's going to be some really substantial impacts. Some of them are going to be obvious. Some of them may not be so obvious, but will definitely be felt. So it's presented as kind of an easy policy that there's no reason to be upset about it. But the deeper you get, and especially I delved into the government's own documentation on this. It's where almost all of my information came from. All the information on how things are going to make everything is going to be worse comes from Ottawa itself.
Okay, well, I look forward to doing a deeper dive on that. But first, I just so that our viewers know very clearly, you've listed, I guess you provided a list of what's going to be banned. So just so I'm clear, so starting December 20th, 2022, I can no longer go to any store and have a plastic to-go bag or a plastic bag on which to carry my groceries, even if I pay that customary 5 cents?
Well, what's going to happen is that it's going to be banned to be manufactured. So it is possible on December 20th that the store you go to still has some, stock lying around. But as 2023 dawns, it's going to be harder and harder to find a store giving out a plastic bag or a restaurant giving out a plastic fork.
Wow.
Or plastic straw. So as time goes on, it's not going to be one day you wake up and these things don't exist at all. But as the coming year unfolds, they're pretty much going to disappear. And then eventually, when you can't make any more, they'll be gone and replaced with wooden wooden knives and paper bags and various other things of, some of them
My
may be just
goodness.
as good and some of them aren't going to be any good at all.
Well, we're going to explore this topic more in detail just as soon as we come back from this break. Stick around. Welcome back. We're discussing the soon-to-be single-use plastics ban that's coming into effect December 2022, and joining me is Peter Shawn Taylor. I want to clear something up. That is term single-use. It means that you use it once. I have to say, if I get a plastic bag from a store, I might use that 4, 5, 6 times. I might use it first to carry my groceries home, and then I might use it then to take something back, say to a book to the library, then I'll bring it home. Eventually, I use it to line my garbage can with, because that is what is required for me to have garbage collection. I have to put it in a plastic bag. So I don't understand. I think it's a misnomer to call plastic bags single use. I'm not suggesting you came up with that, Peter, but is that fair? Am I like the only person who uses the
No,
plastic bag?
you're. Lots of folks on social media have made the same point, and you talk to people, and it's the same thing. All of us will end up buying the plastic bags we used to get from grocery stores simply because they're so useful. And so, are we any better off doing that? I don't think so.
But how can we buy
So
it
yeah.
if there's going to be a ban on manufacturing? Where would we all drive
Well,
off to
they haven't
America?
banned. They haven't banned all plastic bags. They've banned a very particular shape of plastic bag, which is what they call the retail checkout bag. And there's a whole regulatory filing on the shape and the performance of these things, and it goes into how much weight can they carry before they break, and if you wash them, what happens. And so, trust me, the bureaucracy in Ottawa has been all over the definition of what a plastic retail checkout bag is. But those bags you buy specifically to line your garbage can, those have not been banned. Big green garbage bags haven't been banned. So you'll just have to up your purchase of those rather than getting them from the store.
Okay, well, talking about upping our purchase of them, because I feel like for the last decade I have been purchasing them at checkout, by the way. 5 cents, 5 cents.
Yes,
I don't
sir.
know where that 5 cents goes. Does it line the supermarket bottom line? Does it go into a fund? I have no idea. But in your article, you discuss how what kind of impact the ban will have on the consumers' wallets, and I think that's important. Our show, we like to really take our
Sure.
viewers' perspective and see how this would impact them. Obviously, practically, you might be using a metal straw or paper straw instead of now plastic one. Maybe that's an okay compromise for you. Um, but I know this will lead to items being more expensive. We talk about inflation. We know we have a record inflation for this past decade going on right now. How will this kind of ban impact the wallets of Canadians?
Well, you talk to the restaurant sector, you talk to the hotel sector, a lot of small businesses. General rule of thumb, a replacement for a plastic item is probably going to be twice as expensive. That's the case with plastic bags and plastic straws. So yeah, it's going to have an immediate impact on inflation. Uh, Restaurants giving away straws that cost more expensive, it's going to be built into the cost of your meal the same way. Hotels are big users of a single-use plastic in a variety of ways. That's going to, those things are built into the price as well. So yeah, it's going to have an immediate inflationary impact across a wide range of things. And also, most of the replacements don't really work as well. So there's all that kind of thing. That doesn't really show up in inflation figures. But if you've got a straw that eventually turns soggy and doesn't allow you to get the last little bit of your milkshake, there's a kind of cost there to consumers as well, in terms of decreased utility. So
Yes.
yeah, it's going to have an immediate impact. We're talking pennies for the most part in all of these things, right? A plastic bag costs 4 cents and a paper bag might cost 8 or 10 cents. But that's the way inflation works, right? The
But
little pennies add up.
absolutely. And I would assume the objective here is to reduce consumption of these products. But when we talk about the paper straws, you brought up a great point. Paper straw in an iced beverage, like an iced one, like your iced cappuccino or whatever, a slushy, my goodness, those things disintegrate. One time I counted, I think in a 2 hour period, I went through like 5 straws. I thought, surely this can't be better. Surely I am wasting more than I would have if I just had a single plastic straw that would have lasted me those 2 hours. And I know the alternatives to paper would be a metal straw, but I have concerns about the safety of that, especially with children. Um, I don't know. I don't see how this is some of these products, maybe the plastic bag, okay, fine. But I don't see how, the straw argument can be one. And, I brought up in my opener, I'm concerned about those with a disability who do rely on those kind of flexible straws to consume their beverages, to enable them to drink.
Well, that's one of the most surprising things I think when researching this is what the government put himself through hoops trying to figure out about the straw thing, because there's no question, as you said, there's a significant portion of the population out there that need flexible straws to drink because they have some sort of disability, they have trouble um, uh, swallowing, or they're bedridden, etc. How do they drink?
Okay, I'm going to
So the
pause you
federal
there,
government.
Peter. Pause you there. We got to go to commercial. We'll pick this up in just a moment. Welcome back. I'm joined by Peter Shawn Taylor, Senior Features Editor of the C2C Journal, who wrote a recent piece on the plastics ban, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about, is the plastics ban, which starts December 20th, 2022, for those of you who did not know. Peter, just before we went to commercial break, I brought up the plight of those who have a disability who may rely on a flexible plastic straw to drink. How does this policy serve or disserve them?
Well, the issue of straws really crystallizes the absurdity, I think, of the plastics ban. Just a little background: in order for the federal, waste management isn't a federal issue; it's a provincial and local issue. So, in order for the Trudeau government to sort of insert itself into the plastics debate, it had to declare all plastic manufactured items to be toxic under the Environmental Protection Act. So here we are in a world where everything made of plastic is now considered toxic by the federal government. So you brought up straws. Straws are a medical necessity for many people who have some sort of disability or problem, or they're bedridden, needing to swallow liquid. So, and the federal government's documentation admits this. So you've got this conflict here that the plastic straw is, according to the Environmental Protection Act, a toxic material, and also substantial number of people consider them to be a medically necessary device. So what do you do? I think the logical thing would have been to say, we're going to take the straws off our single-use plastic ban. We're not going to ban plastic straws because they're useful. I think all single-use plastic is useful, but let's just talk about straws. Instead, what they did is they've decided to treat plastic straws like we treat cigarettes. Stores will be able to sell plastic straws in packages of 20, but only if they're kept behind a closed door that can only be accessed by a store clerk. And so you'll have to go to the customer service counter and say, I would like to buy some straws. And then they'll go and they'll open a little cupboard and they'll give you your package of straws and you pay for them. Exactly the same way that we treat cigarettes. Clearly, there is no comparison between plastic straws and cigarettes, but that's the absurdity we've reached with this federal government policy. And I think that sort of
but would you have to show proof of disability to buy these straws?
Yeah, no, you could. Well, the
Anybody?
same way you don't have to show proof that you're a smoker, I guess, to buy cigarettes. No, you will be. As I understand it, anyone will be allowed to buy a straw as long as they go through these hoops about, asking and having someone open
Wow.
the cupboard and get them. So, it's just crazy, really. And I think that's emblematic of kind of how this whole thing has unfolded. It's absurd to declare anything plastic toxic.
Well,
It's an inert substance.
that's interesting. That really caught my attention when you said that the government had to declare it a harmful product or toxic, as you mentioned it. And you said that was used as a justification to allow them to, because otherwise, you said it's a provincial issue?
Yeah, that's the only way that the Ottawa was able to insert itself into this plastics debate, is to put plastic on the same list as asbestos and lead and all these, crazy chemicals that are 25 letters long. Yeah, it's an absurdity to do this. I mean, I interviewed one guy in the story who owns a plastic bag manufacturing factory, and he's a very good point. He says, if plastic is toxic, why do we brush our teeth with plastic toothbrushes? Why do we buy bread in plastic bags? Why do we eat yogurt out of plastic tubs? Plastic clearly is not a toxic substance. But this
Why do
is
we bag our milk? That's a big
yeah,
one now with that.
exactly. You can go on like that forever, though. Why do we drive plastic cars? And why are medical devices like an artificial heart? Why is that made of plastic?
Right.
If it's toxic, it's not toxic. and therefore, once you admit plastic isn't toxic, then you have to admit that the federal government doesn't have a role in any of this. This is a provincial and local matter. And every province in the country has introduced some form of extended producer responsibility in terms of what people do with the plastic that they make and ends up being thrown out. So if plastic garbage is your issue, it seems to me the appropriate levels of government were already on the job. And this is just another case of Ottawa, sticking itself in where it doesn't belong and creating all sorts of crazy, unexpected outcomes.
But to your point, and I was going to raise this point, is for many Canadians, they are concerned about plastic, especially plastic debris in the ocean, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. We see imagery. It is very jarring imagery. So I think a lot of Canadians appreciate perhaps the motivation or the suspected motivation as to why there would be a plastic ban, because they would hope that, oh, this is to help clean up the quantity of plastic that we see littered on beaches and littered in the ocean and swept ashore. I want you to answer that question. We've got to cut to commercial break, but I want you to talk to me about whether this ban will actually help eliminate our plastic waste. We'll be right back in just a few moments. Welcome back. We're discussing the soon-to-be plastics ban in December 2022, and joining me is Peter Shawn Taylor. Peter, as I mentioned before, Canadians don't mind going without. They don't mind cutting back or paying even an extra tax if they know that that's going to help a situation. In this case, they're okay maybe with a single plastics use ban if it will mean less garbage in the ocean or less plastic waste and less plastic at the landfill and whatnot. Does this ban help in that effort to reduce plastic garbage, especially in the ocean?
Absolutely not. And Canadians that are concerned about plastic waste, which is a fine thing to be concerned about, and they're shocked by the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, I would say you can rest easy. Lots of evidence points to the fact that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is almost entirely produced by fishing waste from the fishing industry, mainly the Asian fishing industry. In my article, I cited a peer-reviewed article in Nature on the subject that never once mentions Canada. Mentions the 5 countries that are mostly to blame, and Canada isn't there. Another researcher I talked to, calculated how much of plastic ocean waste that Canada contributes. It's fractions of a hundredth of a percentage. It's really, really small. So there's not a big concern that Canadian plastic waste is going into the ocean. Canada, of the 3.2 million tons of plastic waste generated in Canada annually, less than 1% of it is unaccounted for. Almost all of it is landfilled, recycled, burned for energy. Less than 1% ends up as garbage. So that's small. And I cite, shoreline cleanup studies where these 6 items, they're not the big items. They're 8th and 9th on the list. And then you can also look at terrestrial garbage, land, litter. City of Toronto does a very useful survey of litter on random plots of land throughout the city. Again, these 6 items don't show up as major contributors. You'd think if these were the 6 things we decided to ban, they would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the list. They're not.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they're way down the list, 10th or lower. So that it's not a big. These plastic items are not a big contributor to garbage. What I think it is, if I had to come up with a reason, is that they're derived from the oil and gas industry, and therefore they're evil in this other way, right?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I'm like,
Yeah.
if Canada is not among the world's top polluters, then what is the impetus to make this dramatic move to banning this single-use plastic?
Exactly. Well, you talk to Greenpeace and other folks, and they say, big plastic and big fossil fuel, big oil, they're sort of the same. One researcher I talked to called, plastic sort of fossil fuels made solid, right? So they bring with it all the evil associations, I guess, that some activists have with fossil fuels. So that may explain this animosity that we're seeing that really defies the evidence. You point to all the evidence, even the federal government's own cost benefit analysis of this particular policy. So you add up all the benefits and then you add up all the costs. According to the federal government's own calculations, the costs are 1.9 billion. The benefits are 600 million. The net result is costs of 1.3 billion. So based on standard cost benefit analysis, you would not go forward with this policy because its costs are larger than its benefits. But still, they went ahead. It is driven by belief, I think, rather than facts and evidence.
Okay, we only have 30 seconds left before we have to go. How is this going to impact Canadian plastic manufacturers?
Oh, it's going to annihilate them. The one guy I talked to in my story, 40% of his business was making grocery store bags. He says he's just going to have to trash a whole bunch of his equipment because no one's going to buy it anymore. So we're exporting jobs overseas with this because all the paper bags and the woven fabric bags that are now the requirements, they're all made overseas in China and Vietnam. So that's where all the action is going to be from now on.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Peter. You've really highlighted a lot of concerns we have, and not just convenience concerns, but also with jobs and manufacturing. Thank you so much for coming on today to share your insights.
Pleasure always.
Take care.
Yep.
There are so many factors to consider when implementing a policy like this. And of course, Canadians, we want to be more environmental. We want to reduce plastic waste and plastic litter and pollution, especially in our oceans. But did we get this right? I'm not sure about that. For Counterpoint, I'm Tanya Granick-Allen.